I'm glad everybody can make it. I'm excited that everybody's here. What excites me, a lot of people, I guess most people on this call, is the fact that through this technology, I think it's going to be transformational in terms of what it's going to do in terms of bringing people closer together. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about traditional broadcasting and the impact it's having on that. We also have some people on the call that are doing more non-traditional broadcasting. And by that I mean they're broadcasting their own internet television stations. We'll talk about that as well. Just spending a moment setting up one other part of this, and then if anybody else joins, again, one moment. Okay, we'll go ahead and begin. So again, my name is Brian Gerard. I'm going to take a minute and introduce you to folks, and then after that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to kind of give the framework of what this is all about, what our person is doing. So let me run through the list of who's here now. Sarah Hill, which is she's in Missouri. Red, if I got this right, is the station's in the middle of a pasture in Missouri. Is that right?
Yeah, a little bit. Cattle farm. We're on a cattle farm here in Columbia, Missouri, home of the University of Missouri.
Great. And then we've got Josh. What's your last name again, sir?
You're talking to me. I'm sorry, you were breaking up a little bit there.
Yeah, breaking up a little on me. You're in Hollywood, right?
Yep, we're in Los Angeles, California, West LA, and we're at Fox 11 here in Los Angeles. We're the local Fox affiliate, Channel 11.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us. We're about what each person is here in terms of their own use of the technology. Up here with Alan, who with the first book on networking on virtual handshake, Austin, Texas. How are you, Scott?
Hi, great to be here.
Great. And for some reason, there's a gentleman on the I'm seeing who for some reason his name isn't coming up. Can everybody see that? Oh, there it is, Nathan.
That must be me. Yeah. How you guys doing?
Nathan's down at the station. He's involved with Sarah. And we have a couple other people that will be coming in. Let's see about left anybody else. Nathan, what's your role with the station?
I am the producer for UNews. I work with Sarah every day, so I'm working behind the scenes, kind of put the show together, do a lot of the writing, and trying to get everything together, ready for the show at 4.
Hey, we're good. Okay, well, what I'd like to do to kind of start is have Sarah give us kind of some insights in terms of what they're doing there. And Sarah, I posted on the site a recording of an interview done with you, and I thought it was very interesting how you use the analogy of satellite feeds and everything else, and how this has really changed the world of broadcasting. So I'd like you to kind of paint the framework in terms of what you guys are doing, and we'll go around the table and have everybody who's involved in television do that, and then from there we'll open it up for some discussions, some questions. So Sarah, do you want to tell us about the revolutionary new thing? Go ahead.
Yeah, your mic is breaking up a bit, Frank, so just a heads up, we're having some audio issues on your end. I'm not sure if it's your headset or not, but I just wanted to see if maybe while we're talking you might be able to reestablish that connection. I want to introduce Jen Reeves. Jen Reeves is our social media ninja at KONU TV, and is the one who got us on and is helping us innovate essentially the world's first newscast, co-hosted with a live Google Plus Hangout. A lot of broadcasters are using this space. Essentially, it's a free satellite truck attached to a crowdsourcing tool, and with the ability of On-Air Hangouts, which are these Hangouts right here, essentially anyone in the world once this feature becomes available to everyone, will have the ability to broadcast themselves. So they will have the ability to essentially to have their own TV station on their laptop or essentially in their pocket on their mobile phone. So what we're doing with UNews, we co-host a show with a live cyber couch with up to 10 individuals from around the world. And essentially what it's done has blown the lid off of our market area or our DMA. We have viewers now conversing with us in the conversation, not just from mid-Missouri, but from all over the world. Australia, Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands. And they're not only contributing to the conversation, they're leading it, which I think is really exciting. Just a little bit about what we're doing in our and I'll let somebody else talk about how they're using it. Maybe Tashaka?
Sure. Well, excuse me, what we're looking at is definitely how we can use the technology to better connect with our audience and also to connect to a broader audience. With this technology, you're no longer a local news station, and you are now broadcasting to the world. And so one of the great things I think about the use of this is that maybe in our society, in terms of broadcast or mass media, the average person feels like their voice may not get heard. They may not be able to contribute. Sure, they can comment on a website, they can comment on a post somewhere, but this technology allows people to actually have their opinions matter. And so when we're talking elections coming up, we're talking any major breaking news event, we now have the ability to, through this, on their cell phones, through Hangouts, to bring the viewer in and hopefully at some point connect them with candidates, connect them with people running for office, any of many different situations. So it's real exciting, and we're looking to, we have one of the things we do is we have celebrities that come on some of our shows here since we're based in Hollywood, and we're looking to actually connect the viewing audience at home and all over the world with celebrities and get closer to them than they have before, where, before they just watch them come on our set. Now we'll be able to actually allow them to chat. I was doing a hangout at 5 o'clock that we do daily during our 5 o'clock show, and I had somebody who everybody may be familiar with by the phrase, "Hello, Newman." I had Wayne Knight came on our show one night, and I got him to stop back by our control booth where I was sitting having a Google Hangout, and he sat there and talked to the 10 people that were in the Hangout. Everybody took screenshots. They're like, "Oh my God, it's Newman, it's Newman." And so, to me, that is what I'm excited about, is being able to see people's excitement when somebody they really liked on TV, they get to chat with them, as much as face-to-face as can be. So I can talk for everybody.
Well, essentially what it is, Tashaka, and you just hit on it, is the world's first visual back channel for local television stations. We've always been tweeting, Facebooking, and G+ posting with our viewers behind the scenes, but this creates an additional channel, an additional link with viewers to connect with us behind the scenes and sort of peel back that mystery of curtain that we call journalism and let them see the sausage-making process and what we do as journalists. We essentially started hanging out with viewers. We opened up a laptop one day on a news set back in July and said, "Hey, is anybody interested in watching or meeting us?" And the response was overwhelming. Jen, do you want to talk about that, about how that process started back in July?
Sure, and the whole reason we started this was that just the technology offered such instant potential, and it made sense. And what's so great is that not only did it just make sense immediately to us, our technology, getting our engineers interested in helping us route it onto the air, we did it as quick as possible. I'd say Google Plus was open to us. We were on the air with it within 4 days. And I think what's so cool is, for years, broadcast offers such a personal opportunity to connect with our audience. Our audience feels like they know us when we're on the air. now we have that opportunity to truly have that face-to-face that's never been possible before. They see us, now we can finally see them. And what's been really great about that is since we've been in it for so long, and technology, long means 6 months, but we've been in it so long, we've had so many different situations come up. We had a Movember shave-off. We had people in Oslo talk about the bombing. We have had the opportunity to discuss breaking news topics in a hangout, and we've had fun. We've had hard news. We're constantly trying to push what is possible, and I know we surprised even the Google folks about some of the ways we've used it, and I think that's wonderful, and that's why I think this technology is fabulous. It's open to anybody's ideas.
Hey, Sarah, I have a quick question. My live stream is having problems. Can you give me what the link is for people to watch through you?
Mm-hmm. If they go to my Google Plus profile, and that is g+2/KOMU Sarah. So that's g+2/KOMU Sarah.
Right.
And again, that's a short URL that Tashaka and other TV stations are essentially using as their own visual back channel. That's the short code. Who knows, in the future we might not have call letters. Maybe in the future our broadcasting is going to be those short vanity URLs on Google+, because essentially what Hangouts has done has put a broadcasting tower in the middle of the stream. Not only for television stations, but for anyone to have the ability to broadcast. And wow, that is truly revolutionary.
Yeah, there's a gentleman up in New Hampshire that was going to join us, shortstream.tv, who I ran into, and I believe his is all done on the internet, so there's that going on as well. And then there's a fellow who's going to join us, Bob Grosh, I think he's from Florida, who's actually monetizing it and selling spots in the local markets, covering high school football and things like that. So, I really think it's interesting. Sarah, if I could just ask you a question, how exactly are you using it? Are the people that are on in the Hangout, are they going live on traditional television, or what exactly are you doing in terms of how you're deploying it?
Doing it both, actually, and that's why we call it a hybrid newscast, because we not only use it on the air, but we also use it during the commercial breaks as well. So essentially, the guests of our Hangout are displayed in a 50-inch touchscreen. It's kind of like a giant iPad. It's made by AccuWeather. We don't use it for weather. I think people at AccuWeather thought we were nuts when we said we wanted to use the technology to just display a Hangout, but 10 people are in there. I'm standing by the touch screen, and I'm able to manipulate the different thumbnails. For broadcasters, it's important. Google Plus Hangouts have something called telepresence technology, which allows the person who is talking to be automatically promoted to the big box, to that center box when it's audio triggered. So that's why when you hear people typing sometimes, like we just heard, they're propelled up into the big box. So for broadcasters, when you're using the Hangouts, it's important to be able to manipulate those thumbnails so that when you're doing an interview and you hear somebody else in another thumbnail who's typing, you have the ability to either touch their thumbnail on a touch screen or do it on your laptop so that you can have that control. So not only are you anchoring the newscast, but you're also directing it as well, because you're popping in between each one of those thumbnails. And on the on-air features and on the other features of the Google Plus Hangouts, you also have the ability to share your screen. So essentially, you have a video source and another audio source that you can manipulate within that Hangout. So this is kind of like a mini television station. And on U-News, we not only do the day's news, but then we go to our Hangout and ask them, well, what did you think about the National Defense Authorization Act? Bringing people from Oslo, how is that affecting you? Real face-to-face communication. And you find in terms of viewer engagement, talking with viewers on with tweets and Facebook posts behind the scenes are great and valuable things, and Google Plus posts. But when you have them in a Hangout and you are able to see them face to face, the level of engagement there and your level of connection there with the viewers far supersedes any other platform. And I think Shaka or anybody else would agree with me that.
You know, another thing I think that since it's new technology, people are interested in it and they want the exposure for themselves. You know, I think you can grab some people who normally you wouldn't grab to engage them, and I'd like Shaka to share with us some of the interesting things he's been doing and how he's actually brought stars on. Shaka, tell us a little about that.
Well, it all started for us here with the passing of a star and the subsequent trial that followed that passing. The first day that we did a hangout was during the day that the Conrad Murray, the Michael Jackson trial, as it was being called on by many news agencies, the verdict was read. So we're in here in the morning. We broke in, and so we're live on TV broadcasting from the court and bringing people the kind of the flavor of what's going on outside the building, what's going on inside the courtroom. And I'm doing this hangout, and people are sitting on the hangout and they're sharing their experiences and their thoughts on the case, you know, their thoughts on Michael Jackson. And while we were doing that, they handed down the verdict. Now, when they handed down the verdict, you know, people don't realize there's a slight delay between the information we get on our end, on the back end of a news station inside the control room, and what's broadcast out to the public. So the people who were sitting with me in that hangout that day actually heard the verdict seconds before it got on air. So
Amazing.
We're sitting in the hangout, they hear the verdict from me, they start tweeting it, and then people are tweeting them back going, oh my gosh, you knew this before, and they named off all these TV stations that hadn't read it yet, and they're like, how did you know? How did you know? And so to me, that got me immediately. I mean, I knew it was a great technology, but that really just hooked me that people were just excited about the fact that, you know, they had a bit of news before the rest of the world. And it's cool to kind of be in on that and to have that information and have it real time. And so that's kind of what started it. And then since then, I've gotten with one of our anchors, one of our reporters, Maria Quaban, who does the morning, what they call the social media desk. Like Sarah and Jen have talked about, she does the Twitter and the Facebook, but I've talked to her about Hangouts, and I've gotten her on doing Hangouts between her live shots. She does live shots from the newsroom, which is when the camera comes to her and she's live on the air talking about the social media sentiment, anything that's trending. She's talking about all that. So between those live shots, she does a hangout. But what we've started doing is grabbing talent who come on our morning show and bringing them over to her social media desk to sit and talk with whoever she was hanging out with her. So one morning we had Il Volo, who is an internationally known singing group, 3 young men who were just amazing. And they did an impromptu song and started singing Maria from West Side Story to her, and it was great. And we had a surfer, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but this guy comes in, sits down, talks with Maria, and he talks about, now this was a YouTube video that trended and had millions of hits, the surfer we had on, for surfing the world's tallest wave. It was like something like 90 feet. It was in Portugal, and so a lot of news stations ran, you know, the YouTube video, and so I think it was great that people actually got to see the guy that was in this YouTube video. But what was fascinating to me was what people in the Hangout got to experience, and that was him talking about what scares him. Now, we'd all think a 90-foot wave would scare anybody riding it, but this guy starts talking about surfing waves in Alaska, surfing iceberg waves. And that was scary for him. So he sits in the water 50 feet from a glacier. They're waiting for the glacier to break and drop into the water so that it creates a small tidal wave so they can surf it. Now, that's scary enough, but what he tells Maria, tells us, tells the Google audience, was that the scary part wasn't surfing the glacier-created wave. The scary part is only 50 feet from it. And there's only 2 ways a glacier is going to break off and fall. either it's going to move out and drop straight down and create the perfect wave, or it's going to go like this and flatten everybody laying under it.
Wow,
And I was
amazing.
just, and so
Amazing.
to me, this allows, as has been said, for people to have experiences that they would not otherwise be able to connect with. In terms of the actual mass media broadcast. And I think for far too long there have been so many stations that have been behind the curve in terms of technology and catching up with the audience. And I think that this is going to excite people and excite news directors, hopefully, and GMs, and they're going to look at this and say, this is something else we can add to our arsenal to really connect with our audience and give them a voice and really connect them with our product, whatever we're putting on the air.
Great, thanks. Hey, I want to call on Scott Allen now. Like I said, Scott wrote the first book on, I don't know if it was called social media back then, The Virtual Handshake. And Scott, I'd like you to share with people how you think this is going to change interaction in the world of social media beyond the obvious of being able to see people face to face, like your insights.
Well, I think this is a real watershed moment. If you look at historically, we think social media was invented just a few years ago, and really the first thing that we might even consider something like social media was letters to the editor. Letters to the editor at newspapers, and you actually would even have conversations because someone would write a letter to the editor, someone else would write a reply to that, and of course it was in super slow motion and it was only words, but that was really sort of the first version of social media. The next version of it, of course, was talk radio, and if we look at how huge, what a phenomenon, what a cultural phenomenon talk radio became, particularly in the 80s. It was around before then. But if you look at what a cultural phenomenon it has become, and it is even carried over into TV. I mean, if you think about it, the viewer interaction on Howard Stern or on Larry King is just a carryover of talk radio, but you still can't see the people, you can't see their reactions. It's still basically talk radio, this audio over the television. So this really is the first time that we're looking at essentially talk TV, right? That we have the ability to bring in viewers for their reaction and their conversation in real time with all the advantages of the visual, and particularly, as you talked about, as Sarah talked about that you've now basically got a satellite truck on in everybody's. If you think about how many tablets were sold this last Christmas. And you also think about that tablets and most of the new smartphones now actually have two cameras on there that you can switch back and forth between. So you can very easily both be the on-site, you can both be the on-site reporter as well as the cameraman actually taking pictures of whatever is going on with just the flip of a button. So it is clearly the natural evolution of the medium, and like I said, this is really the watershed moment. If you and thinking about bringing it online, think about what happened also besides talk radio is then when you opened up the ability to host talk radio to everybody. I mean, blogtalkradio.com has been how huge, right? And has been a phenomenal success. And if we sit there and think that this is that capability brought here, brought to video, to allow anybody to set up and host a regular show or a report or whatever, I think it's going to be tremendous. Couple of things I think are going to still have to happen for widespread adoption. As we've seen, we don't all have the best, most reliable bandwidth connections from home, and even those of us who have called our provider 5 times to try to get them to fix the intermittent problems. But I think with the advent of increased mobile speeds and improved video compression and everything else that's coming along with it, it's going to be a huge boom in the next few years in this.
And just to dovetail off that, when you mentioned live coverage, the ability of Hangouts to transform how television stations go live. For instance, during the Penn State riots, there were a lot of citizen journalists and people tweeting out there about what was happening. And we at the TV station were on Twitter saying, guys, open up a Hangout on your mobile phone and don't just tweet us what's happening, show us. It is allowing our viewers to go live around the world, and that microwave truck and that satellite truck, who knows what's going to happen to the longevity of that now that there is the ability to go live around the world from your mobile phone, essentially.
Right, with an 8-megapixel camera.
Hey, Sarah, I have David Hoxing on the phone, and this is crude technology, but I'm going to try it. He's on a speakerphone here, and Dave runs 2 stations. They're actually radio stations in Pensacola, Cat Country, and an FM, and we got into broadcasting years ago together. And Dave, sorry to bring you in here late, but we're talking about the impact of being able to do live video conferencing on the internet, and particularly as it relates to broadcast news. And I wonder if you had any insights or thoughts about it. And Sarah, please let me know if you can hear him okay. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I am a Neanderthal when it comes to this particular technology. I have no experience with it, but it certainly makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, what do you think? Aren't you using internet video? Correct me if I'm wrong in terms of what you're doing with your radio station, or is it just social media at this point?
Oh, we're doing social media, and we also do some video on our website for certain events. And then when we send reporters to Iraq 4 times, and we use Skype in order to get their reports back. Worked pretty good, surprisingly enough.
And what's been the reaction of the audience to that? Have you gotten any feedback?
Well, it's all about content, Frank. If you can have content that will draw people in, like this is a military town, so having a reporter in Iraq 4 different times was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But if we were doing a report from Bourbon Street on New Year's Eve, probably nobody would care.
Right, I understand. Okay, thanks, Dave. I'd like to turn it over to some of the staffers there at KMOU. I'll go to Nathan Higgins. And Nathan, share with me what this experience has been with you and what you've learned and some of your observations.
Definitely a rewarding experience, trying to see what works and what doesn't work, and see who we can get on a short-term basis. Sarah mentioned the Penn State riots. We had a student come on and talk about kind of the reactions to that.
Nathan, I'm sorry, you've got an echo on your mic. If you can turn that down, or maybe that's perhaps Frank, that might be for yours from the phone. If you can turn the audio down on your computer, we can better hear.
Is it better now?
Yeah, I think it is. We were just hearing echo on Frank. It's still hearing echo on yours.
Yeah, I just fixed it.
Sounds good. All right. Go ahead, Nathan. Sorry.
Definitely been a rewarding experience, just kind of experimenting with this and seeing what works and what doesn't work.
Dave, there's no way to get you in here.
We local. We try to go national. We're trying to get a bunch of different kind of aspects in there. So it's really interesting just to kind of see what this really does open up for us. Obviously, as the producer, it kind of opens up a whole wealth of different resources we can use, a whole wealth of just different sources we can use to get different perspectives. Sometimes that might be yesterday. We had our lawyer come out and just kind of talk to us about GPS trackers. So it's really just kind of opening up, giving viewers another perspective, giving us a chance to go delve deeper into the context of analysis, something that I think is a little difficult to do as just a producer if we're trying to get a reporter out there. It's kind of hard for them to get the context analysis, but with this show and this device, it really allows us to put this person on camera and just say directly, this isn't really the filtered down version. This is exactly what they're saying, and getting that perspective live and everything like that. So it's been a rewarding experience and just definitely kind of an interesting experience, challenging at times, just to kind of see what different angles and different perspectives we can bring in, whether sometimes, in the newscast, sometimes we have topical hangouts where it's people talking about reactions to a story, and sometimes it's people have their own unique stories to come on. Another thing we're doing is trying to push it locally, trying to push some local awareness about events that are going on. So that's been definitely interesting to come on, and people are obviously ecstatic to come on and tell us about their events coming on. So it really kind of provides another platform to get more engagement and more interaction with our viewers, which I think has been huge. As Sarah's said, is people don't necessarily want to connect to the brand so much, but more to the person. So I mean, Sarah's, if you just see Sarah's social media, just blown up. I mean, more and more people are following her, and just look at Google Plus. So that's obviously a kind of a big factor of it. So it's definitely been a rewarding experience just experimenting with all this different stuff.
And maybe Jen might be able to talk about the new job that these Hangouts are creating, which is the job of Hangout producer. We had to essentially create that job in our newsroom, somebody who is in the Hangout and who can communicate with the Hangout guest who may not be familiar with a live television newscast about things like typing on their keyboard or muting their microphones. I mean, essentially, imagine the wild card of having 10 different people from around the world in your newscast and all, the potential for failure with that. So we've placed Hangout producers inside this platform, essentially, to be sort of a producer for the show within the show. Jen, you want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. I quickly learned that producer think carries into any platform, and working for a television, we have to be very, very aware of who could be on TV. And when you're inside a Hangout, you need to have rules, and you need to make sure everyone's in line with those rules so that A, the show goes well, and B, nobody violates any FCC laws. So you got to be really mindful to that. And we actually have a fabulous community on Google Plus that have actually helped us come up with guidelines that are given to anyone who's new, who's going to participate in any of our online Hangouts, on-air Hangouts, or not on-air for Google Plus, but on-air for our broadcast, which are now, that's kind of confusing when you talk about those two things now. But the community helped with those guidelines, and I've also helped put together guidelines for a producer on how to communicate, what to keep an eye out on. I am the mute Nazi. I'm very focused on making sure that everyone is on mute unless they're going to speak. My little arrow is hovered over mute mic, so the moment I stop talking, I turn it on. I'm very particular about those kinds of things. And those are little skills that are important skills and important guidelines as more and more people become knowledgeable about what it's like to be inside a Hangout.
Great, thanks. I want to go to Scott for one more thing, and then I'm going to go to Bob Grosh who's doing some interesting things. Scott, you said you had a couple other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was just going to build on something that a couple of y'all have mentioned. Is the unfiltered access to celebrities and newsmakers, etc. I think beyond just the matter of the unfiltered access, I know that one of the things that is just from a viewer perspective, it is really difficult sometimes to watch, say, The Tonight Show or whatever, and just go, why didn't he ask that question, right? Because you know that particularly on a lot of late night talk shows that the questions that are asked are what was the producers went over with them beforehand, right? They're prepped. They know what they're going to get asked, and the ability to ask that question that that wouldn't have gotten asked otherwise, I think is a really important aspect of this whole thing as well.
Great, I think that's a great point.
And speaking, sorry, I just wanted to chime in. Speaking of questions, asking people, why didn't you ask that? We have people online now watching and asking. For instance, we have someone asking, you have to talk about how you build the FCC-approved group to play with. Caution, Hangout guests can be unpredictable unless you know them. And that is absolutely right. So this particular person, Joseph, is asking, outside of the Hangout, how do you build those FCC-approved groups? Well, you live in the platform. And if there are any newscasters or broadcasters who are watching this, you need to start spending some time in this platform, because you know what? There are smart people around the world on Google Plus who can teach you things about your business that you had never really thought of. So that's how you do it. What we do as TV stations, we have regular hangs during the day at 2:30 in the afternoon, and it's when we tape our regular news update. we open up a Hangout and say, hey, you want to watch this tape? And by the way, we're displaying you in a monitor, and that allows me the opportunity every day to learn from them. I mean, they are bringing so much information, curating stories, curating new information that's happening on this platform that I would never be able to curate myself, because we're all drinking from the same fire hose. So holding regular hangs every day and meeting these people, and I kind of have a 2 or 3 hangout rule. Once I've hung out with them 2 or 3 times, and get to know them, where they're from, what do they do, you know, we can invite them to the Cyber Couch. Now that process is far more detailed than any time you go live on the air with someone who just witnessed a fire or something like that. So the stringent process for screening people who are part of the Cyber Couch is far more detailed than that. So just had to say that one thing, and Frank, I'll send it to you.
Thanks. I'd like to go to Bob Grosh. Bob is kind of gone out on the leading edge of this stuff and done some really interesting things. And Bob, I'd like you to share with us what you're doing, what you see in terms of this trend, and I'd also like you to refer to the $1 million antenna in the ground analogy you used, which I thought was interesting.
Well, about 3 years ago, I retired, decided to start something new, and one possibility was creating a local TV station. I was an engineer and helped other people do that. And I looked at a high-definition, low-power antenna in a small town. And for about $800,000 to the federal government, you can do that. And I decided, wait a minute, why don't I just spend $10 a year for Google for a URL and do it without the antenna? I'll reach more people. There's not many people who have actually got up on a roof and torn down that old analog thing and put up a new digital one. They get it from the cable company anyway. So I thought, okay, and we started out 3 years ago. We do about 5 hours a day of live programming every day. We also carry football games, baseball games, family reunions, high school reunions, parades, church services, all sorts of specials. We've got over 4 million viewer minutes. We do, in fact, we carry more locally originated live content than ABC, CBS, and NBC in the rest of the state of Alabama combined.
Wow, that's really interesting. And also, I think you're selling local advertising based on the number of people that actually view the program, right?
Yes. I learned a long time ago that the problem isn't just technical. It's political, social, and economic. And you got to have all 4 corners put together. So from the beginning, I thought what we need is a business model for it. And local advertisers in a small town like Tallahassee, which has a population of about 6,000, would have to advertise on a bigger station like in Birmingham that gets out. They're reaching viewers 150 miles away, and nobody's going to drive 150 miles to get their car washed, drop off their dry cleaning, do their laundry, eat at a small restaurant. And so I knew that a lot of advertising dollars is spent by local advertisers. I mean, we all hear about Coca-Cola and Budweiser and the Super Bowl, but it looked like the real money is in local advertising. So even though I've never had a salesperson or approached anybody about advertising, Tallahassee TV has been profitable since day one. I've gotten every month in 3 years, I've gotten a check anywhere from $33 to $4,500. And that's not bad for something that I do out of my living room, 200 miles away from the town I'm broadcasting in.
Very interesting. Well, Sarah, you reminded me of the nature of this thing, interactive, and I'd like to turn it back over to you, and since you're getting the questions there, and if you could share with us what else you're seeing, if there's some more questions coming across.
Well, you know, Bob mentioned four corners, and I'd just like to talk about that just a little bit because, and if there's any news station out there that's interested in doing this, they not only need to get their news personnel on the platform, but they also need to get their sales departments, promotions departments, engineering departments on the platform, because it is a four-corner approach. And you know, that's one of the hurdles that we face with this broadcast, is we have a lot of people consuming our content right now from around the world, but they are invisible because we don't have a way to measure them. And you know, until maybe the Google API comes out, or if somebody out there who's watching this, please help us figure out, how do we measure these individuals? You know, how many people are viewing these streams, and where do they live? Who is consuming our content from around the world? I mean, right now, legacy television stations like ourselves are clinging to those Nielsen ratings like they are gospel. But you know what? There are people outside of our DMA who are consuming our content. So we need to be able to measure them. So all of those smart folks on this platform right now who are watching this, come up with these ways that we can measure these viewers, so that we can get an accurate count of people who are consuming our content. And that's why I say, you know, Hangouts are essentially, you know, what are we going to do with all of those old metal broadcast sticks in the ground?
Well, and I actually wanted to piggyback on what you said about the Nielsen's. One of the things that's very promising from a sales perspective, from a monetization perspective, is that Nielsen ratings, and many people don't understand exactly how Nielsen's work, but they're somewhat arbitrary, and they're a little antiquated. When you look at web metrics, in light of web metrics.
I would say more than a little, just,
Yes. I'm being nice, but, yeah, so, you know, the ability to actually take hard numbers, UVPMs, unique visitors per month, the ability to take redirects, the ability to take all these web metrics and compile them and actually show the return on investment is such a huge bonus to what we do, you know, especially when you have an advertiser, your sales team, who's going to sell ad space on your website, on your company's or your corporate website. You can actually establish a dollar value to your social media efforts. And all of this is all social media is all one big pot. And what we have to do as people who are kind of trying to lead the clarion call here to adopt this technology, because believe you me, there are still a lot more news directors and GMs around the country who aren't quite comfortable with really jumping in all the way, you know, not just dipping a toe, not just having a, you know, to me, in my opinion, in my very humble opinion, it's not enough to just have a Twitter feed and a Facebook page. That is honestly just an RSS front end for your website. So, you know, you're putting stories up on your website and you've got an IT guy who's pushing those stories directly to your Facebook page and out to your Twitter, and there's very little engagement. We have to view Twitter, Facebook, Google+, we have to view any of these technologies as just as important. It's holistic. We can't just say, oh, well, we're broadcasters and we're just going to do this on the side because this is what people want. We have to say, no, we're broadcasters, and part of broadcasting is being broad. And the Internet comes into that broad. And that's what people have not been, that's why the television has lost market share. It's not because the Internet is better in that it can bring in people's commentary, but it's the people running television. It's the people who've been, you know, said, hey, we don't really want to adjust the business model, or we don't really want to adjust how we're doing things. We have to.
You know, it reminds me, I don't know if you know, Joe Barker wrote a book called The Paradigm Shift, and he talked about Swiss watch companies who were approached by the digital watch companies, and they shook their heads and said, this is never going to go anywhere. And I think that those newscasters and those traditional broadcast companies who don't embrace this, you know, the time's going to come when they're going to be left behind and they're going to say, what happened?
Look at who declared bankruptcy today. Kodak, okay? You know, you're absolutely right. And Bob, you've got your hand raised, and we'll come to you in just a moment, but I also wanted to dovetail. There's a saying that goes that you not only have to drive the car, but you have to fix it while you're driving. I'm not sure, my apologies, if it was Terry Heaton or Jay Rosen or Jeff Jarvis who first said that, but in Terry Heaton's book, he says you have to fix the car while you're driving it, and that's an incredibly hard thing to do. And here at KOMU, since we are affiliated with the University of Missouri, we're not only fixing the car while we're driving it, but we're teaching others how to drive the car. And these are all of the things that we have in our conversations. For instance, about the Nielsen ratings. Essentially, what followers on Google Plus are, what your followers are people using television, PUTs, households using television on the Nielsen's ratings, but they are in the stream, essentially in the stream. So I find that fascinating. And Bob had something he wanted to weigh in as well.
Well, I think Frank asked me to cover how I bill. And one of the things I do is I stream everything on live stream or Justin TV or whatever streaming service. It doesn't really matter. I change from time to time. It's embedded on my web page. So I have the web page metrics to know what's going on as far as viewers. But the main thing I have is a count on any of those streaming services, how many viewers I have. And the way I handle advertising is I say, depending on whether it's just an overhead graphic or an audio mention or a 15-second ad or a 30-second ad, you get billed by the number of viewers who are watching your ad at the time I play it. And I log that every time I play an ad. So, and that's an unusual situation because with Nielsen ratings, I think there was some court cases a while back where some of those ratings companies admitted they were grossly inflating the numbers to help their advertising. But with me, if somebody runs an ad on my channel, they can watch the channel, and when their ad shows, they can look at that count and compare it to my log of what I bill them for at the end of the month. So they know exactly how many people are watching.
What could be better than that? If you look at traditional media, it's not that way. I mean, traditional newspapers sell circulation. Doesn't mean people read the page, right? So I think it's going to.
I can also look at chat and see who's logged into chat at the time, and oftentimes we have people in chat ask questions about the advertiser, where are they located, what's their phone number, something like that.
Yeah, that's back to the interactive that Sarah talks about, which adds a whole new dimension to this. I have a question back to Scott for a minute, and to Sarah. If you were to look a year down the road, what's your guess on where this all is going to be? What's going to be different? What's going to evolve? I'll start with you, Scott. What do you think?
Well, I think, and I'm going to actually use this to add an additional question for Sarah. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be looking to make shows like this that are for internet only, and just as has happened with Blog Talk Radio. And I think I think you'll start seeing either Google will provide it or an ecosystem will evolve around it, as so often does, that will allow for things like monetization and metrics and everything else to make it accessible to the small business person or casual or person with a passion about a particular topic who wants to host a weekly show on this, and seeing those tools evolve so that it is more than right here it's just sort of straight content. As we all know, it's inevitable that it's going to end up with the around it. So I think an ecosystem of the additional tools is going to be one of the key things that's going to happen. And with that, I'll add to Sarah's question. Now, all of the things you talked about FCC guidelines is all premised on the idea of then taking this and rebroadcasting this over the air. If you're going internet only, if you're doing a show like this internet only, that's basically a non-issue, right?
I think
Yes,
we should
absolutely.
also, but there's a certain level of professionalism that we don't want to lose either. So there's a give and take that's definitely more available online.
Well, my channel.
Well, of course, and I'm sure Google has their own guidelines about, I don't think you can, I doubt you can use Google Hangouts to, host a multi-person porn session, but But as far as what's said or hand gestures, I think online. There's been actually an issue about that. I don't know if y'all caught the issue about someone's Google profile pic and the fact that they were shooting the bird in their profile pic, and there was a big hubbub about that. There's one argument that says it's free speech, but as soon as you start saying, and I can buy that if it's in your own space that people have the option to participate in, but as soon as you start talking about something being syndicated to places where people don't have a choice about the fact that it shows under, say, recent viewers or recent show names or anything like that, then I think you have to take. I think Google, I think the provider of the service is going to take some responsibility, and I think they're well within their right to set some boundaries on that too. So.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Two things I wanted to mention. Listening to all this, one initiative I'm going to start is put up a forum for on and off-air broadcasters, forum board where we can exchange ideas as this whole thing evolves. The other thing, a little self-serving here, but I wanted to tell people that, if you want to see some other shows like this, we're going to really take slices of life, doing comedians, doing photographers to talk about Google Plus and the impact there. And it's at hangoutroundtable.com. I wanted to open it up again to any other thoughts people have on what the future is going to hold, both in terms of broadcasting and the rest. Shaka, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback what Scott and what Jim said. I think there's 2 points I want to make. One, where do I see it in a year? When we start talking about people broadcasting directly to the internet, I think we also have to be mindful and not forget that the FTC jumped in on bloggers. I'm huge into blogging. So we have to remember that when it comes to contests, when it comes to monetization, there are going to be people watching. There are going to be government bodies watching, and as soon as this all blows up, they're going to want a piece. It's just the way it is. And so I think we have to be mindful that even though we won't have to deal with FCC, we're going to have to deal more than likely, because, we can't say for sure, but I think more than likely we're going to have to deal with something. And what that something is, remains to be seen. But if you look at SOPA, you look at PIPA, you look at the Open Act, there are going to be some things I think that will come into play from the government with regard to that. And then B, and I know I should have had a pen and paper and a pad in front of me because I forgot B.
Yeah.
Maybe I got a B.
Go ahead.
If I could just say, you ask where do you see this in the coming years. I mean, as far as what I do as my business, I see this as, in a death of the news anchor, in that we are no longer sitting behind a desk just reading a teleprompter, right? We are interacting on multiple platforms, and matter of fact, I called it to somebody, we're trying to figure out what do you call these people that are floating between multiple platforms and also doing these hybrid kind of newscasts where you have a visual back channel going, a news buoy, are you floating among platform to platform? And I think that news anchors out there need to adapt and, be in the places where people are having the conversations, Twitter, Facebook, Google+. Learn these platforms, hop on the platforms and just say, guys, will you teach me? And essentially that's what we did and had an incredible response from the people who've contributed to UNews about teaching us this platform. So, for broadcasters, I think it's really going to change the role of the broadcaster in that, is this the death of the news anchor? I don't know. And the creation of, a hybrid news anchor or a news buoy that floats between platforms.
I remember B, if I could take a quick second here to throw that in. What Jen said, where she said we have to have a level of professionalism. Again, having done just a little bit of my background that I didn't talk about is I run along with 3 partners a website called dadstalking.com. Right now, we started this organically. We started this Twitter hashtag called Dad's Talking, which is the most trafficked parenting hashtag on Twitter. If you want to get your message out and hashtag it with mom, dad, parenting, ours gets more traffic than all those combined. And it really happened by no doing of our own. And so one of the things I've seen is even with internet popularity, and even when you have Scobles and Leo Laporte and people like that, I think the difference between the internet and broadcast is that with broadcast, it has a long history, and you flip a switch and you've got millions of viewers. And I think what people have to understand is when you can create a synergy between what's going on online and what's going on broadcast, I think that's when you maximize the full potential of all of these broadcast technologies, whether they're broadcast through fiber channel on the ground, whether they're broadcast with an antenna over the air. And so we can't discount one or the other. I see, all these articles talking about the internet is eating television's lunch. Yes and no. It is in that there's an attraction to it, but it isn't in that, look at the shows on TV that you go, how did that make it on the air? They get on TV, they get on the air, and people watch. And again, millions of people, even if it's only for 1 or 2 episodes. But the bottom line is there still is that built-in audience with television. So we just have to be careful and not discount one or the other, but seek to find the balance and seek to find the synergy that exists between the two to maximize both and really create what really will be a broadcast.
And will it even be a broadcast? Will it be a horizontal cast? Because essentially that's what we're doing. We're not necessarily broadcasting anymore. We're no longer shouting from the mountaintops. We're connecting horizontally with these viewers who then share our content and share and share and share and reshare. We're no longer shouting from the mountaintops. We are connecting one to few who then share and share and share.
Very interesting. I have a question. So we have all these on-air channels that are popping up. So we got tremendous capacity for content. So one question I have is how do we fill that so that it's not just one show? One thing I was wondering about, if you take the traditional broadcasting model, you have networks and you have shared content across networks, and I'm just wondering, I'll start with Sarah, if you think that it'll evolve to that where, like your on-air channel or anyone's where, there's content shared across multiple channels all live. Do you think that'll happen, and how do you think that'll evolve?
Yeah, I'll let Jen Reeves answer that actually, because she has better insight into that than I do.
Wow. How will it all evolve? I wish I could just say. I know. I'd be making a lot more money, actually, if that was the case. I think that it actually does come down to sales. I think that's where I will officially say I think we're in a holding pattern in the traditional world of broadcast right now. While those of us who are creating content and are highly aware of its potential are hitting the wall when it comes to our current money-making product is the tradition. And I'm not sure how it's going to evolve within traditional. I think it's the non-traditional that's going to succeed until traditional can figure it out on its side. So I think all of us who get it are going to be doing more than just the traditional stuff. We're going to come up with our own stuff on the side so that we can keep this going and help it evolve and help find ways that our beloved traditional broadcast can live on in whatever shape it will be. I do, yeah.
And I think it'll revolutionize not only the news space but the sales space. So, for instance, there are some people in our sales office who now have a web camera and a Google Plus account. It's no longer knocking on doors on your local car dealership. It's being in the platform called Google Plus and knocking on doors via webcam. Revolutionizing not just the news but the sales implications as well.
Something comes to mind there. I could picture a salesperson going out and actually recording the commercial as they sign them up and bringing that back.
Do that.
So
One-man band for salespeople, not just for news people. One-man band.
Yeah, interesting. Scott, one thing you and I talked about is the lack of an integrated strategy in terms of social media, and we've got all these pieces now with traditional broadcast part of it. What do you think? A lot of people don't have an integrated strategy. There's all these pieces. What do you think about that relative to broadcasting and in general?
Well, this is something Shaka referred to earlier, is that you really can't just sit there and go and say, ooh, all right, we've got our an RSS front, or an RSS view of our front page on Twitter and Facebook. Therefore, we're doing social media. And oh wow, this is great. Google Hangouts looks good. Let's add that. There's a combination of strategy and end-to-end technology as well that have to be tied together. First of all is knowing where your audience is, and that's it's the first thing that any small business, any business should look at, is knowing who your audience is and where they are, and that's where you've got to go and be finding them. And I'll just point out that in my consulting practice, one of the things I found over and over and over again was that the first or second most useful social media site for any given client was usually not one of the big three. It was usually some niche, specialty focused community where they could reach a very, very high concentration of their target audience, their target market. Mm-hmm. And that may be very much the case for this as it proliferates. The place may not be to sit there and go that all of a sudden you're worldwide and you're providing news. I mean, how much market is there for how many shows can actually go and do a couch that goes worldwide without any more regional or topical focus than that? Okay, you're getting to do that now because you're the early adopter. Okay, and you're going to build an audience and you'll get to continue to have one. But for new people coming into it, they're going to have to find a focus, whether it's geographic or topical, and the places to go and share that and find show participants as well as audience may not be in the big 3 or 4 sites on a large scale. It may be finding the niche communities within those, or even niche topical communities around whatever their topic is. And so as part of that overall social media strategy, you've got to include finding that targeted market as part of your social media strategy. The other thing is just that, I know that Jen and Jen, I know you're going to just know exactly what I'm talking about, is even knowing a whole lot about social media, just the work of getting content in appropriately contextualized out to the different platforms is just a massive undertaking, and we don't generally have very good tools for doing it. We've got I liken it to, you can have the blueprint, you got the strategy, I've got the guidelines as to what the house is going to look like when it's finished and what all needs to be in it, and I can have my toolbox that I know how to use a wrench, and I know how to use a screwdriver, and I know how to use a hammer, but just because I have the blueprint and a toolbox doesn't mean I know how to build the house. And this is the thing I think organizations of all sizes are finding particularly challenged about social media, and this is actually one of the places where they're having one of the most difficult times with ROI, is because the costs of it are so high. A lot of them haven't even figured out, it's like, okay, great, I can use Hootsuite to post to Twitter and Facebook at the same time. And that's why they only post to Twitter and Facebook, because Hootsuite only, supports 2 or 3 channels. When you start thinking about social media not only for engagement purposes, but for SEO purposes, you should probably have 20 or 30 channels you're publishing to. And it shouldn't be any more difficult to publish to the 20 or 30 channels than it is to publish to the 2 or 3. So I think that I think that one of the big trends for 2012 in social media is going to be what I'll call sensible automation, which is not. There are some things that actually should happen completely automatically. There are some things that just absolutely should happen completely automatically. There are some things that should be facilitated, but I think we've got to start getting our technology to do some of the heavy lifting, but in a way that still keeps engagement authentic. So I think there's a big opportunity there, and this is certainly going to be a piece of this. Great, we've had this hangout. What happens next, right? We capture the video. I mean, really, from here, wouldn't you really like it to basically be, all right, we've captured this whole thing, press one button at the end, say we're done, and the video is posted out to 37 video sites, and your link is shared across, your link is shared across the sites where you actually engage, and then you've got, and then you're watching for feedback from those sites, specifically about links to this, so you can, for the next 24 to 48 hours, focus on making sure you've got high responsiveness to comments about this particular artifact that we've created. That's my ideal world. And we're not there yet. And there's a lot of technology, that's got to come into place to make that stuff happen. Right now, it's still a lot of heavy lifting, and we shouldn't have to be doing that heavy lifting.
I agree. Well, we're a little past the top of the hour here. I wanted to find out if Sarah, you have any other questions you got, or any wrap-up comments kind of encapsulating this whole session. I can't hear you for some reason.
Your mic may be muted, Sarah.
Sorry about that.
Sarah's mic, right?
Okay, yeah,
sorry.
I'm looking offline here, and again, this would be a great feature to have in Hangouts, is the ability to have that chat and viewers ask questions inside the Hangout and not having to open up another window. But I'm opening up another window and seeing from Australia, Michael Tucker is asking, has the content that you use during your daily broadcast changed since using Google Hangouts as opposed to traditional broadcasts? Yes. Michael Tucker, it has changed. It has more of an international flair, and we have more of a global perspective in our content on the shows where we use this platform. So, for instance, mainstream media was reporting a story about the Occupy movement, and I forget which news organization it was, but they, reported that the Occupy movement started on Wall Street, some months ago, and our international viewers correctly pointed out, whoa, 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 not everything started in America. This movement, started in Spain and other regions. This just wasn't created in New York. So items like that having a more wider perspective has greatly increased our content, and just the ability to go live with somebody in Pakistan and break down those cultural barriers, go live with somebody in Australia on a boat. We had someone on our live newscast the other day who was at a zoo with kangaroos and crocodiles in the middle of Australia. I mean, who would have thought that would be possible to have group conversations from the news? One of our viewers contributors from Austria calls the local newscast the new campfires of the future, and that people will gather around newscasts not only to soak in the information, but also to comment about it as well, because people in this age don't just want the news, they want opinion about it, and they want to be able to share their opinions and argument about it as well. Shaka, you are shaking your head?
Yes, I had to unmute my mic. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to be in a position to give new meaning to the word town hall. And I think given the state of this country, the state of citizens' trust or lack thereof in their politicians and the people who are governing them, I think we're in a unique position right now to really grab a hold of and harness this technology to get people's voices heard in a mass way that has not been possible before. And I think what we have to do is have the fearlessness to ask a politician to sit in a room with people who obviously have been vetted, because you don't want somebody just coming in and cussing the politician out, because then you'll never get them back on again. And also, that's just not appropriate. But you have to ask people to be fearless enough to engage with the public in a forum like this, where it may just be 10 people in this room, but through the On-Air Hangout, there's millions of people who who are going to see that video clip. And you know what? That's going to, honestly, it's going to take some courage. And I think that it's going to be an interesting time to see just who is going to step up to the plate and how we're going to step up to the plate and do that. It's a scary thing for many people who are the people who are going to have to deal with FCC issues, or going to have to, the people who pay the bills, so to speak. A lot of this is scary. So we're living in some very interesting times here in broadcast journalism.
Yeah, scary and exciting. There is no staircase, so by golly, we're going to build one.
Absolutely. Woo!
Hey, Scott, any final comments from you?
Scott, your mic is muted.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, my brain's just on fire about thinking about when I'm going to start my own regular hangout.
Yeah.
Or 2, or 3.
Yeah.
They get addictive. They do, most definitely.
And one thing I'm working on, and I heard Jen say she is, and I'd love to collaborate a little on it, is kind of putting together and evolving some guidelines on how to run these things. I think it's an important part of it to have the structure. This is the first one I've done, more formally, and I'm thinking to myself, how in the world do you moderate something like this? But I thought everybody did pretty well, no?
Yep.
So, well, I want to thank everybody for coming on. I'm really excited about this, as everybody else is. And Sarah, I want to thank you for making the on-air possible. Me, along with a lot of other people out there, are waiting on the edge of our seat to be able to have that same capability. And I want to thank everybody for being our guests. This has been really interesting. And I want to say it was enjoyable, and thanks again.
Our pleasure. We're excited about using this platform to tell the important stories.
Thank you for inviting me. I'd love having these kinds of conversations, and I hope they happen a whole lot more and have a whole lot more action at the back end of them by everybody in broadcast journalism.
Hear, hear.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.